Hello, welcome back. It's Bert. Today we're going to be talking about how to sell on a phone call or Zoom call. First, I want to acknowledge that there are plenty and many different versions on how to sell in a conversation, in a phone call or Zoom call. Do which one makes you feel most comfortable. But for this one, I like to be more human. I like to build that human connection, make that rapport, just, bringing that attention and coming off less as a businessman, but as a coach and as a person. So I'm going to dive into some pointers that I've been doing and practicing, and hopefully you resonate with it and practice it on your own services as well. Okay, for this first one, as I mentioned earlier, building rapport. What I love to do is I love to build rapport. But I also want to mention that when I book clients, it's either a 60-minute call or a 30-minute connect call. And because, I know that they are choosing between those two times, let's just focus on the 30-minute connect call. So if you have a client that connects with you for 30 minutes, whether that's you reaching out to them or them writing in your submission form, it doesn't matter which way, how they do it. It's 30 minutes. You know that you don't have that many time or that much time because time is valuable. So what I love to do for the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I build my rapport. I go ahead and ask power questions or just getting to know them. For example, how have you been? I call that a power question because it allows them to speak. And then you just listen and dictate what they're talking about, getting a sense of their world. And then you say, okay, that's amazing. What does this look like? What does that look like? And then you share your story. Building that rapport for about 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to keep it short however long. Just you're going to break that tension. Now that you have built that rapport and that connection with that potential client by asking how are you, how you been, let's jump into the intention. Now here is where you want to get intentional and being your professional self. And I always like to say power phrases by saying, I love hearing what you've been up to and how you're doing. It's great. But I also want to get us grounded and be intentional in this call. You did submit this on our submission form talking about brand building. How can I best help you and what are some frustrations you're seeing in your business? You see, I also got straight to the point by saying if he submitted a submission form, I can say, hey, I noticed that you submitted a form talking about brand building. Then I jump straight to the problem or the question by saying, what are some frustrations or problems you have in your business? And then I just listen and then I will pay attention to certain things that he's going to say. Once you have him talking, I don't want you to sell just yet. I want you to ask a lot of questions. A lot of beautiful questions is what I call it. But keep in mind that this is only a 30-minute call. So have your beautiful questions ready and prepared in front of you. Or if you practice enough, you will know. I would just say maybe 2 to 3 questions max if you're short on time. But here are some power phrases or power questions I want to share with you. So let's just say that if, Jack or David is talking to you saying that I'm having problems by showing up more consistently, getting more engagement, and being consistent with my brand. And then what you would say is, okay, what about your brand that you're doing is not working? How can we solve that? By joining my program or by working with me in my services. Because what we want to do is we also want to ask questions where the client is also in a way answering their own questions. Because as a coach, we never really want to intentionally tell them how to solve it. We want to help them solve it, even though we have the answers. And I also want to say that don't ask why questions, because that's kind of like victim blaming or blaming them. We want to focus on questions that start with what and how. Remember how I mentioned earlier, I mentioned what about brand building that makes you feel frustrated, or how can you transition your business to a brand, or how can you bring more awareness by working with my services? Because not only are you allowing them to solve their own problems, but you are also allowing them to convince themselves to work for or with you. For example, if I was to say, how is working with me in my program going to help your brand get more engagement and showing up consistently? And then either he can be like, oh, what? Why are you asking me that? Shouldn't you know? Or mostly they would say, I really think your service will help me get consistent on my messaging, on my branding as far as graphics, my social templates. Because then they are like, wow, if I'm saying that he's going to benefit me this way, why not just invest? I'm convincing myself to join the program or the service. So by asking what and how question benefits you in two ways. You're letting the client answer their own questions. And two, you're also letting them convince themselves to join your program, your service, or to work together. All right, now that we have built that rapport and asking beautiful questions, now we can dive into and transition into your services and what you provide. And what I like to do is I also like to use power phrases by saying, Jack, I appreciate you for telling me your concerns. I hear you, and I definitely feel the need of your business in expanding or repositioning it. My program, we have two offers. Offer one, I do this. Offer two, I do this. The investment you have for offer one is this, for offer two is this. And I always say this, I want to pause here to see if you have any questions or if there has been any inspirations that has sparked within a conversation before here. Now just pause, and I will let them think. They usually go, oh, wow, that is expensive, or like, what does investing like that look like? And then I can go in, depending on how the conversation goes. If it's about money, then you can go on and say, this is a big investment, but this is the value that I believe you will get from it. By telling them this is what they will get from it, not what you will get from it, right? So this is the value that you will get from it. You mentioned about that your brand or your business is struggling showing up consistently. You want more engagement. I believe that program one will bring value to you by giving you more consistent graphics, a consistent messaging, which generates more leads and sales. I believe that's the value you will get from working in my first program. By just saying that allows that client or that person to feel like, okay, Bert is correct. He did mention I do have a problem and I did come to him and this is what's going to solve it. So now either they in their head are going to make excuses to not invest, or they're going to be like, you know what? He's right. I have to invest. And lastly, I will end it with this. After you have pitched your service by saying, hey, these are my two programs. This is what values it will bring to you because you mentioned this. You can end it with a closer by saying, what are you comfortable with moving forward? Package one or package two? So that way they can pick and choose. And if they say, you know what, Bert, I want to think about it. I'm not sure if I'm ready. What I love to do is when they say that, I always say, I totally understand. I want to make sure you feel comfortable because this is an investment for you. But since we're on the call right now, I would love to do a follow-up. Let's do a follow-up to check back in to see how you're feeling. And the reason why this is important is because if after the call, you email them saying, hey, I would love to do a follow-up, they are not going to reply back, or they're going to take forever and that's going to take time. So what I want you to do is right in that call, ask them, hey, let's do a follow-up call. Either that's going to happen next week on the same day, but that's going to happen in 3 days. However duration you want, always end by saying, let's schedule a connect call, a follow-up call to see how you're doing. Okay. Mention that. Make sure you get that scheduled. Entrepreneurs and business owners, that's it. That is a conversation on how to sell on a call, phone call, Zoom call. Practice that. I know it is intimidating, but I do want to say practice does make perfect. So as you go into this mindset, right, always have an open mind, be critical of yourself, and don't be afraid.